Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Mark Eichman. Governor Carney has had some time to reflect on the legislative year that recently ended. We'll talk minimum wage, budget smoothing, and new ideas to grow jobs.
Growing new flavors of ice cream requires really thinking of ingredients you'd never guess would mix. How about pork roll?
Interesting. And meet the Milton artist who brings her paintings of southern Delaware to life with people, animals, and even her own family.
First, your public media news magazine starts now. An odd thing happened on the way to the end of the legislative session last month. An all-night argument over an increase in the minimum wage kept legislators in Dover until early morning.
Right. In our first look this week, we discuss that issue and others with Governor John Carney. Governor, in unusually early fashion, the state's $4.27 billion budget was passed early, and I think many expected that the final night of the legislative session would end early, which, I mean, still in this case, it's about 2:30 in the morning. It went all the way till 8:30 in the morning, and it was held up because of the minimum wage increase battle. What happened there? Were you surprised that minimum wage held things up for as long as it did?
Actually, I was surprised. I was betting that we'd be out of there by 2 a.m. I was wrong by 6 hours or so. A very unpleasant 6 hours. In the end, though, we did get a raise in the minimum wage with a compromise with a sub-minimum wage for youth and teenagers and interns. And I thought that was a good compromise. It should have come 4 or 5 hours earlier if there was a recognition that there was a minimum wage vote that was going to occur. And whenever you have to pass a bond bill, it requires a supermajority vote. The minority party in either chamber can hold things up, and so it probably should have been anticipated. But in the end, we got a good bond bill, a capital spending bill, as well as an increase in the minimum wage.
But why was the minimum wage fight so last minute? I mean, was that
it shouldn't have been
on purpose?
Again, it shouldn't
like
have been
a bargaining chip, maybe.
It was. There were members in the Senate who were withholding their votes on the minimum wage pending a reconciliation of the casino bill, the casino tax bill. And when that passed, it actually passed prior to June 30th. So there should have, again, been an awareness that this might be coming.
Budget smoothing now, the proposed constitutional amendment, it was shelved. It did have a lot of bipartisan support, so then what happened?
Yeah, I think it did have. I think part of it is that people were nervous about it. Would have been a significant change. This would have only been the first leg, so they would have had a whole nother General Assembly to pass the second leg. It did come late in the session in that respect, but it's just too bad because it's a better way of doing business. The idea was to make available some of those reserve funds, which since they were created in the late 1970s have never been used. And right now, that's $250 million to soften the blow in a downturn, a revenue downturn like last year, and then to control spending in some of the stronger years like this. Legislators argued, hey, we did that this year on our own. We put 1%, another close to $50 million in a reserve account, which is what budget smoothing really contemplates. Right. And so it was their argument that they could do it with their own discretion, legislative discretion. I signed an executive order saying that I would follow those general rules in proposing our governor's proposed budget next year and in subsequent years.
I want to take a step back, though. The rainy day fund that had been set up, and I mean, that's kind of what the budget smoothing would have created,
yeah, but
right?
The rainy day fund is constrained. It's never been used. It's a buffer, really, for declining revenue, but it's never been used to avoid tax increases or cuts.
And so, as you mentioned, the executive order that you signed, it does accomplish about the same things that your budget smoothing bill would have done, but it
establishes,
sort of cuts out the legislators.
It does. It establishes the rules that we will follow by executive order, and we'll present a budget that with a spending target based on the government price index and healthcare inflation and population growth, that type of thing. It will be recommended by our nonpartisan Delaware Economic and Financial Advisory Committee. They do our revenues. And so take the politics out of that, establishing what the growth number ought to be. And then we'll live within that, establish a reserve fund, even though we can't create a reserve fund without the legislature. And so, yeah, the legislature will be, I think there will be some pressure on them to follow those rules as well. And at least this year, we were able to convince them to do that in the budget that I recommended and they passed.
Okay, I want to move on to guns and your assault weapons ban. It didn't make it out of committee. What happened there? Was the language too broad?
Well, I think there's a line that some of the Second Amendment gun advocates draw with respect to banning certain weapons. We did, I think, importantly pass, and I signed red flag legislation, the Joe Biden Gun Violence Prevention Act, which creates a red flag that would enable a court to take guns away from somebody with severe mental illness, and a similar red flag piece of legislation that would enable the same kind of process with due process rights through a court for somebody that a family or law enforcement determines to be a threat to himself or someone else. And those are really, when you think about it, important pieces of legislation in our efforts to control gun violence in our communities. We also passed legislation, and I signed a prohibition against bump stocks, which enables somebody convert, like the Las Vegas massacre, convert a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun, which have been outlawed in the country since the 1930s, and increase penalties for straw purchases. And finally, we passed a resolution and financing for gun safety plans for school districts, or school safety plans for districts across the state, which is, again, another important measure.
And then as we wrap up, just want to talk about the future priorities for you and for the state. You know, what's ahead?
Yeah, so number one is always doing the things that strengthen our economy. We passed legislation that enabled for a private partnership at the Port of Wilmington. That's a really big deal. It was approved by the federal government, so we've got a third party coming in that's committed to investing hundreds of millions of dollars, creating jobs, a new port in Edgemoor, and expanding the port in Wilmington. Those blue-collar jobs are really important. We made significant investments in workforce and our institutions of higher ed, which are driving economic development now more than ever. So a lot of extra money, millions of dollars for their facilities in terms of unfunded liabilities and expansion of their facilities. We also made an investment in Christiana School District, the schools in the city of Wilmington. That memorandum of understanding passed legislation with additional monies for schools that serve high poverty populations. That's a focus. Also passed legislation to enable loan repayment for teachers who would go to teach in those schools, to encourage young people to bring their skills to some of those high poverty schools. So workforce, developing our economy and creating jobs, and improving our schools, which are all connected.
So the governor clearly has his sights set on new gun legislation, another try at the assault weapons ban, also the budget smoothing amendment he wants to try to get through with a new group of members of the General Assembly in January.
Right. And so as long as the state revenues are good, it'll be interesting to see if the new group of legislators want to change the traditional way of doing business. So this legislative session, it was a busy one. For a full recap, go to de.gov/recap. Coming up on First, meet a Milton folk artist who paints scenes of southern Delaware that are so alive, people have told her they want to jump right into the paintings. And we go deep into the art of unusual ice cream flavors. I scream, you scream, we all scream for pork roll ice cream? Later on First.
We have another look this week into the world of an artist who makes up the community of Arden near the Pennsylvania line in Delaware. Rick Rothrock was born into a family of silversmiths, but he veered off course slightly to find his own craft path. You'll see what we mean in a story produced by Karen Smiles for Friday Arts.
Art is like culture. It changes from everybody's perspective. The artist finding their own expression. I feel at this point that it's like finding miracles. Here's this raw piece of the universe and you've got to turn it into something that's special. Or I find in it things that are special. Every stone has a story. It comes from a place and it's unique to that place, even though there is a general sense of different materials based on how they're made. It sort of started as an amazing thing, and it hasn't stopped being amazing. Every time I finish a piece, I have to stand back and appreciate what it is and how it fits into the general flow of my work. My father and his father and his brother had a business making silver hollowware, and it was in the 19th century tradition. From a very young age, I was sort of surrounded by the idea of making stuff. It was very much a part of who I was. I think of it like theater. You have 1,000 people come to a show, and it lasts an hour or two, and that's the experience. In sculpture, it's probably just the opposite. It lasts for 100 years, and maybe 1,000 people appreciate it, sort of 1 and 2 or 10 at a time. Every single commission that I've ever done has been different, has been unique. I couldn't make a blueprint for how it proceeds, because it has so much to do with the relationship with the person or the group or the institution that's doing the commissioning and myself and their understanding. And more lately, I keep having the opportunity where people come and say, Rick, well, we want you to do what you do. That's such a thrill, because A, it means that they connect with what I'm trying to accomplish as an artist. And B, it means that I'm free to interpret the work in my own way, or in a way that's consistent with how I've come to see the world. I really want a conversation to occur between the work and the place and the people that inhabit the place. I wanted to encourage their interaction and to encourage the way they experience the place. In other words, give the place a vitality that without the sculpture it might not have. The project at Freedom Plaza was very serendipitous. They were completely replacing the park between the city building and the State Carvel building. And I had just gotten done reading William White's Rediscovering the City. William White's a sociologist, and he had written this in the 80s. He spent 18 years studying public places in New York City and how people interacted with them, and made some conclusions about what makes a place more successful or less successful. If you want a successful public space, you have to appeal to as many different points of view as you can. Different heights on the seats, different places to be. Certain personalities like to be in a public space, certain personalities like to be off to the side. Hence the design with the big stone wall dividing it, and the symbol of spheres coming together in a space. The director of the City of Wilmington Cultural Arts Department invited me to come down to that corner of the city where there was a dump. It was full of ash, coal ash, which is really kind of all that it takes. I embraced that challenge, and we started designing a community space that was commemorative of Clifford Brown's genius. He died at 28 years old. At that time, he was the most prolific jazz writer, arguably, in history. We built the twin obelisks right up there. On top of that, we put Clifford Brown. It was important to me that he be up there, you know, and that we, when we look at it, we hold ourselves in a way that shoulders back and chin up, and really appreciating the environment, the place. Around the circle of the piece commemorating Clifford Brown are benches that are dedicated to artists that he played with, teachers that he worked with, his wife, Sonny Rollins, his partner, and people that contributed to his well-being and his genius that allowed him to succeed. Music is an abstract thing that isn't physical, other than vibration. The music is designed so that when you walk in the park, there's an industrial sensor, movement sensor, motion detector, and it detects somebody's there and plays them a song. There's 28 different songs, all by Clifford, and the music has played continuously now for 4 years. Kendu's a great park. The playground is designed for children of all abilities to make it very not complicated. The idea was, if I take a rock from the place and just cut it in half and fold it open, and inside you find the Kendu. Last time I was there, this kid just ran in the park and just ran right in and just smacked his hands against the rock. There was this physical sensation that he was experiencing, like children do in a playground. It was a real joyful kind of expression. And you put your finger up here and you get a shadow from the light hitting there. After living here for 30 years and working here for 30 years, it's nice to have a piece in a place where I can live with it. People activate my work. Often I put the piece there and I am 200 miles away or even 30 miles away. I don't get to see it every day, and I don't get to see the effect that the work has on the community where it's installed. The nice thing is that the curvature of the piece reflects the light back through the hole, so when somebody's looking through the hole, their face is lit up. The processes of everyday life really are who we are and what activates this place. So it was just a wonderful opportunity to express that sense of continuity and connection here in a town that's so full of creative energy and accomplishes so much with the people that live here. The top of this piece is made out of a piece of marble from Carrara in Italy. And you can see the translucency on the edge. But as the sun turns towards sunset, it gets a wonderful contrast with the light and the backlighting. When I was waiting for the cement truck to come to pour the floor in my studio, I had a day in between. So I decided to dig myself a pond that was deep enough to hold fish and plants. I love the garden. The thing about the garden is it's one thing in life that just keeps coming back. And you really don't do much to it. You remove the competition and let it go. And it's rewarding. It's beautiful to see. And it changes all year round. The sculpture becomes a structure in the winter. There's no plants, but there's all this structure. Kids are here. Every time I turn around, I think this must be it, and there's one more thing that needs to be done, and it continues. It's beautiful.
The website, if you want to learn more, rickrothrock.com. He has a show coming up in January at the Delaware Contemporary featuring his work. It's definitely worth a look.
Kathy Budgie considers herself a folk artist. Self-taught, a gift from her husband back in 1979, is actually what got her started in art. From New Hampshire to Virginia and now Delaware, Kathy finds inspiration in the buildings and places around her and brings these places to life with animals, people, and even a family connection. We visit Kathy in her Milton studio for First Experience this week.
My name's Kathy Budgie. I consider myself a folk artist. The way I would define that is self-taught. My pictures kind of just tell a story. When I was pregnant with my daughter, in 1979, my husband got me a paint set, oil paints, and I just started painting. In the beginning, I would say it was truly folk art. A lot of country scenes, country rolling hills, animals. And then when I moved down here, I started doing local scenes. I still put people and animals in some of my older pictures. I have like horse and carriages and the way it used to look days gone by. A lot of my ideas I get from people saying, have you ever done this or that? They have family memories, or it's their favorite restaurant or favorite place to take the kids out for ice cream. It's fun to just make them come alive with people and animals and people eating their ice cream cone and things like that. People have such a connection with where they love to eat. So that's a lot of the pictures, but a lot of them are family memories. Fisherman's Wharf has those boats where the people go out whale watching or watching the dolphins. And Funland, that was another one. And sometimes they're silly. I have one called Girls' Night Out. That's a picture of witches dancing around a cauldron on the beach. And that's been my fastest selling print I've ever had. So I never had any idea that witches would bring such an audience. So that was kind of neat. We have a daughter. She's a redhead. So if you look in my pictures, you'll see a red-headed girl with 2 yellow labs, Phoebe and Samantha, and those are the yellow labs that she grew up with. Then she got married and she had 3 children, and 2 of them are twins. They're 4 now. They're redheads, identical redheaded twins. And our 6-year-old granddaughter is also, she's blonde, so she's in the pictures too. The comments from the people is just wonderful. They always say they want to walk into my paintings. It just feels really good. It's just a nice feeling creating a work of art. I'm not sure if you're ever really done with a painting. I think you finally reach a point where you just say, this works. It's just a feeling you get when you look at it. This works, this is done, this is what I wanted to create. Giving people the pleasure of seeing something that makes them happy, that really works for me.
Kathy says her studio is open anytime she's home. She encourages pop-in visits. And she's also a really good cook, as our First Experience crew discovered. Kathy is part of the Nassau Valley Vineyards Art Show beginning September 1st. Her studio has an open house scheduled on September 15th. And you can get more information on those events and check out more of Kathy's work at bushyart.com.
What do you get when you combine an ice cream entrepreneur trained in Delaware with a classic New Jersey breakfast meat? Well, a viral hit that's getting attention from news outlets around the world. This week, we explore what may be the golden age of ice cream, where the only limit on creativity is imagination and the palate of customers. Welcome to Sussex County, northern New Jersey. We're here at Windy Brow Farms, where a University of Delaware graduate has created an unusual, some would say odd, maybe bizarre ice cream flavor. We're going to go inside and take a taste. Jake Hunt stays very busy these days, thanks to his curious concoction that puts pieces of pork roll meat and French toast in ice cream form.
It starts with taking Taylor ham that we chop up into slices, and then that gets tossed with cinnamon and sugar. We take that out of the oven, mix it with our homemade French toast that we make from scratch, from challah bread, and mix that with more maple syrup, bring it all together, make a maple ice cream base for it, and then it just gets swirled in and then freezes for 12 hours. It's been an interesting ride so far. I didn't think that something so crazy as this was going to take as wild of a turn as it has. I think we've been surprised by the amount of people that have come out and tried it.
After its debut, the creation grabbed headlines around the world. Culinary website Eater called it the ultimate New Jersey delicacy, while others like Vice.com were less impressed, calling pork roll ice cream an abomination. For the unfamiliar, pork roll, sometimes called by the brand name Taylor ham, is a breakfast meat that's best described as a cross between ham and Canadian bacon, a salty New Jersey favorite that goes great on a bagel, egg, and cheese sandwich. Pork roll is celebrated with its own festival in Trenton.
Pork roll is bacon's naughty little cousin.
But pork roll in an ice cream?
There's a lot of people that are doing some really interesting, creative, strange things with ice cream out there. And I think as taste change and perception changes, people are going to be more open to that kind of thing.
The ice cream is part of Hunt's only in Jersey collection of flavors he's debuting this summer to celebrate his creamery's 5-year anniversary. He took his sweet, savory flavor to Trenton's Pork Roll Festival to give fans a taste.
It's different. It tastes really good, and it can be deceiving because it's pork roll and ice cream mixed together. But I'm going to tell you, it tastes really good.
It's a little bit sweet and a little salty. It's a perfect combination.
It's fantastic. I love it. I love it. There's nothing that pork roll doesn't improve.
We know we have a good product, but definitely surprised by the amount of people that like it and have learned to love it, even though they went into it thinking it was going to be disgusting.
It's got an unusual texture, but it's definitely not disgusting.
This works. Good.
While Jake's family has been in northern New Jersey for nearly 350 years, he got his start in the ice cream biz while a student at the University of Delaware.
I was part of an internship team with the Dairy Creamery that existed before we even had a building and before we even had a creamery. So we really got to see what it was like to build a business from the ground up with a business plan, with no management, no official anything at that point. So that really kind of sparked my entrepreneurship spirit.
Jake was a great intern of ours. He actually had the Dairy Creamery assistant manager internship for 2 years here. So it was really fantastic to see how successful he's been and how he's coming up with creative ideas. He definitely has some unique flavors. We try not to outshoot each other on the flavor side, but I think he got us with the pork roll. We're pretty excited that it's so successful for him.
The Dairy Creamery has been quite successful too. I recommend the goat cheese and fig flavor. UD recently celebrated its 1-year anniversary at its location in downtown Wilmington and plans to expand into cheese production in the near future.
It's a great time to be in the ice cream business because there is so much creativity allowed. We have an influx of ingredients coming from internationally and from different countries that we have a greater freedom to bring in. But we also have a lot of creative customers that want to try something new, and the employees, the students that we have, they want to try new and exciting things with those different flavor combinations.
Back in North Jersey, Jake has plans for more flavors in the Only in Jersey series.
We're going to do a roasted tomato flavor at some point this summer, which I think will really kind of get people intrigued, but isn't all that outlandish. And we're going to do a sweet corn flavor that really highlights the production of sweet corn that we have here in New Jersey. But we don't think they're going to go as crazy as this one has. This one will keep us crazy enough for long enough.
The most common reaction from people I've talked to about pork roll ice cream is disbelief and kind of a sneer. But among people I've convinced to give it a shot, they've almost all said they've liked it. And now, Shirley, for the real test, give it a go.
Okay. I like pork roll. I just don't know if I like it in my ice cream.
It is an odd combination for sure.
And so there's French toast in here too.
Right.
Okay.
Drum roll. Yeah, that's about the face we're going for.
Ooh,
Chewy.
the chew is a little
much.
Yeah, a little much. The flavor is good though.
Right.
I like the sweet and salty. Okay, so is it here to stay for good?
Well, unfortunately, pork roll ice cream is, I know you're upset about this, only expected to last through the end of July. But if there's enough demand, Jake says he might keep making it. If not, he'll bring it back as an anniversary flavor next summer.
Acquired taste, I guess. Okay,
yeah.
well, maybe it'll grow on me. Well, next week on First, swallow the pork roll. The League of Women Voters are set to roll out an in-depth voter guide for Delawareans to use this fall. And the Victor Talking Machine Company is a part of the past and future of Camden, New Jersey and Dover, Delaware.
And Peter Crimmins will explain that connection. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Shirley Min, who's going to have another bite. No? I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.